Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Matthew, the television's not on. I'm Therese Evans. I am the chair of the committee, and sitting next to me is the vice chair, Councillor Rutter, and Councillor Rutter will be taking the last item today. Sitting round the table, we have the committee councillors on either side, on the wings of the table, and then going along the top table, we have Fiona Sutherland, who's our legal advisor, Julie Pinnock, who's head of built environment, and Matthew, who's doing the clerking for today. Just a few notices. We're not anticipating a fire practice, so if you hear the fire alarm, then it is for real. And please, would you leave the building to the assembly point? Please don't use the lift. Please go down the stairs. There are alternative stairs there, should we need them. And the assembly point is in Abbey Gardens. Please could you turn your mobile phones off or onto silent, and to advise you that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the council's website. It is also being televised and will be transferred to the council's YouTube after the meeting, where it will remain. So we start then with the first business item, which is agenda item 11. It's in the South Downs National Park, /20/04015/FUL, and it's the construction of detached 3-bedroom chalet dwelling with office space and laboratory for the owner / operator of Dadcar Stud Park Lane, Upper Swanmore. The case officer is Hannah Harrison, and when you're ready, Hannah, we're ready to hear the presentation.
Chairman, would it be appropriate for me to declare a personal interest, because this site is within my ward, and
yes.
I know a bit about the background history that unfortunately Hannah hasn't been able to discover.
So I know that you took legal advice, so
yeah.
you're declaring a personal interest, not prejudicial.
No, I don't know them personally.
No, no.
I don't believe it is prejudicial.
Yes.
I have no financial interest on this site at all.
So you've had advice from the
I've
legal officer?
had advice, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor.
Chair, actually, I think Councillor Pearce has probably been very cautious, because my advice is probably not even a personal interest, it's just his background knowledge of the site as our ward councillor,
Yeah.
which he brings to the table, as you all do, through a local knowledge of sites.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Right, Hannah, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Today I present to you Dadcar Stud Park Lane, Upper Swanmore. Here we have the location and land ownership mapped out in red. I will now go through my site photos. There's a small map on the bottom right-hand corner to give you an idea of where the camera is and the location of the site. So these photos are taken at the entrance of Dadcar Stud, looking into the location. Again, facing out from the location, looking onto the main road. Photos taken in the approximate location of the proposed dwelling. Photo taken from on the other side of the road, on another stud farm, looking into the location. There is an arrow dictating where the barn is currently on Dadcar Stud. These photos are taken from within the barn. This is an aerial view of the approximate location of the dwelling on the site. I'll now go through the plans. This is the ground floor proposed. First floor proposed. And finally, 3D visuals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have one public speaker today who is a supporter, Mrs. Ellie Dadkar. Good afternoon. If you'd like to come forward to the table, you don't have to sit down, but you might be more comfortable if you do. But in any case, could you turn the microphone on? There's a button at the bottom. Right. And then when you start speaking, you may sit down if you want to. It's more comfortable that way. And when you start speaking, the timer will come onto the screen and you have 3 minutes. So when you're ready.
Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So I am Mrs. Dacker, the owner of the stud, or the property. A few things I would like to clarify. Firstly, the nitrate mitigation, which had been mentioned in the update as well. We submitted a nitrate mitigation calculation on the 28th of November 2020. And we submitted ecosystem reports as well on the 28th of October 20. As you could see from the plans as well, we are not going for option 1 on the top of the hill. We're going for option 2 behind the barn, where we can be more easily hidden. We're on the lowest part of the land. The land originally belonged to the farm next door. We're actually quite close to the farm buildings. So I can't see, why we're actually creating much more of a landscape impact, if you like. Also in the plans for the dwelling that we have submitted, we have always said on several occasions, several emails and emails and letters, that we would obviously consult and work with the planning authority on what designs they would like us to use. We have no set idea about what we want. We will work with whatever the national park wants, but we haven't had any response to these requests that we've made. We've had support from Swanmore Parish Council. Droxford, I note, only objected to option 1, us being up on the hill. The size is larger than 120 square metres because we have a disabled son in a wheelchair, who lives with us, which is why we need room for him that has to be flat and level and accessible. And also, well, we can't really have a mobile home, static caravan, temporary dwelling like that, because we have to have something that is accessible and usable for our son in a wheelchair. We are not actually actively running a business at the site at the moment. These are our own horses, which we've been breeding for 7 years, and we have sustained financially for 7 years on our own. But we are now being approached, because we've been successful, by other people asking us to breed their horses for them. This is an income stream that we could develop, and I could develop as a full-time job for myself. I mean, I work there full-time anyway, looking after my own horses anyway. So this is why, but we can't have clients there without a property on site, because they won't trust us.
I'm going to have to stop you there, and I hope we finished. Please stay there though, because the members of the committee might have supplementary questions for you. Councillor Reid.
It may seem a little strange, Chairman. You mentioned you'd written to the council. Could I just inquire as to whether that was directly to the South Downs or to Winchester?
It was always to Hannah Harrison, our case officer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Mr. Dudker, you heard me say that I had a personal interest in this, because I'm the ward councillor.
Yes.
Could you tell me, was it yourselves who built the barn initially, or was it the farmer that you referred to?
It was ourselves. So we purchased the land in 2012 from Mr. Platt,
Yeah.
the farmer, and we had the barn built in 2015. After we'd obviously achieved planning permission, which took quite a while.
And the other question I'd like to ask of you is, it may well be relevant as well. The farmer originally reared very great cart horses on this site.
Shire horses.
Shire
Fred Rutter,
Yeah.
the farmer's
Sort
father-in-law.
of like yourself, not a lot different. I know they were big animals and lovely
Yes.
animals. So would you argue therefore that this has been an equestrian site for many a long year, not for riding horses, but for horses?
It's been an equestrian site for over 40 years, and Mr. Platt, the current farmer owner,
Yeah.
who is the son-in-law of Mr. Rutter, who was the breeder of the horses, has offered to give any evidence that the council would like, proving that the site has been used for the breeding of horses and for the maintenance of horses for the last 40 years or more. Yes, they've always bred horses there, always, and we've continued.
I wish to ask you that because it's part of the history that
History, yes, I appreciate that.
To get. So
Yes, thank you.
I think may be relevant for you.
To what I'm saying, yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Could I just ask you,
You may.
you've got permission or lawful development certificate for private recreational
Yes,
use?
yes, we applied for that after the barn was built, yes.
So if you
We'd have to change that presumably. Presumably we'd have to change that going forwards if this is successful.
Yeah. So the need, if you apply for another planning application and that's successful, you need the house to live on site, to care for the horses, or?
Yes. Sorry, I'm not quite sure what
I'm
your
just
comment-
checking why you're wanting to build a 3-bedroom, isn't it? A 3-bedroom.
Yes, well, the 3 bedrooms is, I mean, obviously one of them is for our son, as I said before.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the need for a house on site is twofold. One, obviously the care and welfare of the animals. Because we're breeding, we have pregnant horses giving birth, we don't know when, I mean we know a window, but you know, we have pregnant horses giving birth, and then we have youngsters, foals being weaned at 6 months and then running on until they're 4 years of age, when they then go away to start their ridden careers. We've had a couple of accidents. I mean, young horses, pregnant mares, and labour and pregnancy is dangerous and needs constant supervision. And youngsters often, unfortunately, hurt themselves. We had one basically break his leg in the field, running into a fence post. I happened to be there when it happened, so I was instantly able to get a vet to come and alleviate the animal's suffering. It was an 8-month-old foal, and he wasn't left suffering, whereas obviously if I wasn't on site, he would have been suffering for God knows how long if he'd done it at night, for example. So that's one reason. The other reason is, of course, we live at the moment in Winchester. Winchester to the site is 14 miles each way. I'm clocking up an awful lot of carbon footprint travelling there every day. And what I have to tend to do now, as we're entering the breeding season now, is I have to go there early in the morning and stay there and leave at night, because there's no point me, I mean, sometimes I do have to come back to Winchester for appointments and then go back again and stay there again. So, you know, it's the carbon footprint and actually the welfare of the animals. And like I said, if I'm going to take in clients' horses, they're going to expect me to be there.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry to hear about your problems with the animals. But at the moment, you don't have the support of Bruton Knowles, who is...
No, apparently we don't have the support of Bruton Knowles. we're not overly surprised about that. We're not actually convinced that Bruton Knowles understand the equestrian stud business entirely. I know they've referred to the Equine Business Guide, 7th edition or 6th edition. I've looked at the 7th edition and I'm not entirely sure its costings are correct either. So I'm not surprised that Bruton Knowles. The thing is, Bruton Knowles have made their report and recommendation, but saying we're not sustainable at the moment because we haven't given them enough books or whatever. As I've said before, we've been breeding our own horses there, so I haven't run it as a business to have books yet. Now I'm being approached by clients, I would have to. I've kept my own accounts for specifically for the last 18 months to see what sort of costings I've had and everything. But as I say, we've been breeding our own horses there for 7 years and managed perfectly sustainably. So there's no reason why that shouldn't continue with an extra income stream from clients sending me horses as well. Plus, of course, breeding horses is a rather long-term investment goal because I can't sell the horses for any money until they're at least 4 or 5 years old and they've proved their value. So all that time, the cost is mine. But as I say, I've managed to do that quite well for 7 years, and we're actually quite well-known breeders. We've bred some rather decent horses.
Thank you. And the final question.
Yes.
I do understand the journey because I live in Wickham, so
Yes.
you know, it's quite a long way up to Winchester and back. But have you attempted to find a property which is nearer than Winchester?
We have, yes. We've been searching on Rightmove. We've looked in and around the village and in and around Bishop's Waltham. The problem we have is, has it been economically viable to buy somewhere locally? Swanmore is very expensive area. And you know, any further away than that would really defeat the purpose. I need to be, you know, there or thereabouts. And secondly, of course, our problem is always, whenever we are, and historically has always been, whenever we're looking for properties to live in, we have a son in a wheelchair. It has to be accessible and usable for him, and that's proving to be quite a problem. So the idea is that we build somewhere that's suitable.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Councillor Rafal.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned your son in a wheelchair. Where is he going to sleep in this new house?
Well, he would actually have a downstairs room.
Well, why is he not in the plan?
Well, yeah, originally.
The office, laboratory, nowhere for him to sleep.
No, that's because originally when the plans were done, when we first submitted this, our son wasn't living with us. He was living independently for his job in London. Unfortunately, that hasn't worked out and he's had to move home. So we would have to sacrifice the downstairs room, one of the downstairs rooms like the boot room, and make that into an ensuite wet room and bedroom for him.
So the tack room would now be a bedroom?
Yes, it would be a bedroom with an ensuite wet room for him.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. So thank you very much for coming along today.
Thank you very much.
Hannah, anything you want to tell us from having listened to the public address? No. So we'll move then on to the report, starting on page 120, where we have principle of development and use of land. Any questions there? If not, oh yes, Councillor Pearson.
Well, as Hannah said, it's a very prominent location. If anyone travelling up or down Park Lane, you can't miss it. But then you can't miss any farm building.
Is this a question?
It is. I thought. Well, yeah, it is a question actually. No, it's not. It's debate. I'll shut up.
You said it, didn't you? Any other questions on those two sections? So we've got impact on the character and appearance of the area. Do you want to comment on that, Councillor Pearson? Do you want to ask a question?
Well, no, because it would have to be part of my debate.
Okay. And then the rest of the report. We've all read in the update sheet that there is in fact an error in the recommendation, and so on page 123 the officer is recommending refusal, and we have extra conditions also added on while we're looking at that. Any questions on the end of the report? So debate. Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, as I was saying, anyone who travels up and down Park Lane can't miss this building. The difficulty, I think, for the applicant is that this building was built either at the time the owner of the farmer retired or shortly after. I'm a little uncertain exactly the time when it was built. But I've got to say it was an issue as it was built because it was so out in the open by the lay of the land. It's a broad chalk valley, if you can imagine that. Hannah mentioned hedges and stuff. Well, the hedges are around the outside, in actual fact. You've heard Mr. Decker say about the fall getting caught in one of the fences, and that's what it is. That's what divides the paddocks up in our fences. I would also say that the Shire horses were reared from the farm, and all the stabling they needed was actually in the farm, which the Dackers don't own. Although I understood originally some sort of loose partnership, but quite clearly what Mr. Dacker is saying, that is not the case now. And so when this building was put up, the parish council's, Swanwell Parish Council, were really surprised, but it was built, as I understand it, under permitted development as a farm building. And arguably, while the Shire horses were reared on this site and have been for many long years, very, very good pedigree horses. But they were reared as farm animals rather than equestrian. So there's a planning difference there, which we all understand. Now, then started an argument, I think, between South Downs National Park and Swanwell. I don't think Droxford was actually involved at that time as to what was happening in that building, and because it became obvious that it was turned into stables. I mean, that's just background to what Hannah's report says, and the bits of information that Hannah was able to discover, I suspect, because the early planning was part of the farm rather than as a separate curtilage. That may well have been the reason. But other than that, I've got no issue with what Hannah's conclusions are. Unfortunately, some of the things she wasn't a bit of financial background, this sort of thing, and whether the Dudkers like what they said or not, the fact is that information not there and is needed for what I think we're able to make a decision on this. Other than Hannah saying, look, no, we can't, as it is now. I don't know. I don't know what Hannah would recommend, that they go back and get the additional information and come back and tell us as a new application. But that's entirely up to the planning committee and, of course, what the case officer said. So
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. This particular application I found quite interesting in a way, and what we've been told today by the applicant leads me to believe that it's ill-conceived at this point in time. The plans that we're viewing for the rest of the structure itself was on the 3rd of November 2020. Yet we've been told today, because sad news that their son has rejoined them in the house, he's disabled. There is no other way of getting upstairs other than the staircase. So a tack room would become the bedroom. Well, the tack room is the link between the house and the other structure, is the way that I'm reading the plan. So does that mean everybody's got to go through the bedroom? I think, quite honestly, Chair, this application needs to be resubmitted, if so, showing the exact layout with regard to the house itself and how it links in with what is already existing on site. I will go along with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Any further contributions to debate? I would like to say I know the site well. It is a very open site, and National Park does insist on applications being landscape led. So top of the hill would have not been at all successful. So I do understand that the applicant has brought it down behind a large barn structure, but even so, it is still going to be quite prominent in the landscape. Bruton Knowles is not supporting it, and normally they're very good, and we have every confidence in their statements. And what Bruton Knowles is saying is not yet. The business is not yet ready to be supported. And I'm very sorry about the disabled son and the need to, I understand the need to have wheelchair access, but that is not a reason to live there, perhaps. So I too will be supporting the officer's recommendation for refusal. Any further contributions? So this application has been recommended for refusal. We have sort of altered conditions. They're on the update sheet on page 6. There are 3 of them, and those replace the one that's in the report. So all those in favour of refusal, please show.
That's unanimous, Chair.
So that application is refused. Thank you very much. Councillor Rotter is taking over as chair now, so just give me a few minutes to clear my thing.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Welcome back to the meeting of today's Planning Committee. And we're now on item number 12, reference number SDNP 21027004 FUL at Gauges Close on Main Road in Itchen Abbas. We go straight into the officer presenting the report to us, which is Charlotte Fleming. Charlotte, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Afternoon all. So this is application for a replacement dwelling at Gauges Close in Itchen Abbas. So we've, is the house appearing? No. So it's set outside the settlement boundary of Itchen Abbas, with the main village to the right of, or to the east of the site. There's a footpath along the south of the site, and there's an avenue of trees which is privately accessed to the site. Yeah, that's sort of the general location. So here we've got lots of large detached dwellings around the site, and as you can see there's a blue arrow at the top next to Biggles Cottage, which is the access avenue of lime trees down. Neighbours have referenced a fishing cottage, which is sort of located at the end of the avenue of trees, just above the River Itchen. The footpath runs along the south of the site, and the River Itchen is a sink and ancient woodland as well around there. So the top left photo is the eastern side of the existing property and the northern side with the garage just off to the east of the site. Top right photo is to the west with the tile hangings and sort of a bit of the south elevation with the bay window. And the bottom photo is from the bottom of the garden looking up to the south or the rear of the site, and sort of what you look up towards from the footpath, but it's more hidden. So these are the views from the footpath. So the photo with the swing is at the bottom of the garden. There's an access track to the property, Green Acres, I think it is, between the hedge and the post and rail fence to the left of the trees. And then the footpath is the other side of the fence, as you can see. The photo on the right is me standing on the footpath looking up at the site, across the access track, through the beech hedge and up towards sort of the first floor of the existing property. At the bottom photo is I walked down to the river, and it's sort of the site slope, the field slopes down from the footpath towards the river, and it's looking up at the site, and you can see Green Acres on the left by the sort of dead looking tree. I don't think it is, just the photo time. There's a house in the middle, which is Gauges Close, and one to the right, I think that's Summerfold over here, tucked away. Access is down a private TPO'd avenue of lime trees from the main road throughout Itchen Abbas, which goes along here, and access goes through these two protected trees onto the site, and this is Gauges Close here. These are some of the surrounding properties of various designs and sizes. So this is Summerfold, which is opposite the access. This is, I think it's Trees, which is to the north of the site, and this is Green Acres, which is to the west of the site, along the access track and the footpath. So there's a lot of history on this site. An extension was approved in 2019, so 2 stories to the west elevation where the tile hanging is, and a single-story extension over the link to the garage where the decorative brickwork is. Then that's the parts in blue. The parts in yellow were permitted development, single-story rear extensions, and the part in pink was a loft extension, which is also permitted development. Heritage assessed it at the original application stage and said it wasn't a listed building or non-designated heritage asset, and they've confirmed this in much greater detail at application stage, as you can see in my report. So this is the site plan. So the red line is where the existing house is, a 2-story property, and then this is a plan of the 1.5-story proposal on the site, with the garage over here, access still in the same place, and parking to the north of the site where it currently is. These are the floor plans. They're a little bit small, but there's a good 3D visual here. So it's designed as a passive house. So they've got lots of windows on the southern elevation, looking out over the river and getting light in, with long-term living proposed here, with bedroom on the ground floor, and then more servicing rooms to the rear in the north. Yeah, and then there's extra bedrooms upstairs as well. These are the revised elevations. So I think we're on about revision 3 of these after pre-app stage and urban design panel review. So this is what we're looking to approve. So this is north facing, this is south facing over the river. This is to the east, sort of from the access, and this is to the west from the garage sort of direction. As you can see in the photo, and it's in the planning statements and design statements as well, the proposal is lower than the existing ridge height. So there's a red line here of the existing dwelling, and this is how the proposed will sit in the property and the site. This is the final slide. This is the materials they're proposing, but I have put a condition on recommending the samples and the materials are finalised by condition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Thank you. Okay, we have public speaking now. We have 2 public speakers, and the first one is the objector, Mr. Toby Stubbs. If you'd like to come up to one of the microphones, please. The microphone is switched on with the button at the front. It's all right, we won't start timing you until you start speaking, and then you have 3 minutes.
Can I just correct one thing? It's not whatever you call it, green acre, it's actually Grains League.
Oh, apologies, I'm sorry.
You might have known that.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for that correction. Matthew will switch on the timer when you're ready, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Building a house to passive house standards appears sound, but there are many other considerations which must be taken into consideration. There are severe consequences for the ecology of the immediate surroundings and beyond, which have been conveniently overlooked. The Council's Ecology Officer, Zoe Keebles, said on the 15th of July last year and the 28th of February this year that the report she lists must be received prior to determination of the application. A mere 2 days ago, a letter was posted from Zoe Keeble, heading Ecological Consultation of 4th of March. The fact that reptiles are on site appears to be of no interest. The letter is redacted, which I find abhorrent. There is no sign of the consultation. Who was consulted? And why is this not in the public domain, as it's of paramount importance in making the correct determination here? There is no report, but merely suggested conditions, such as the biodiversity game plan, as required by SDNP, should be submitted and approved prior to development. The existing property has an approximate gross internal area of 257 square metres, including the garage. The proposed building has a GIA of approximately 434 square metres, excluding the garage. This vast difference is incompatible with making a biodiversity net gain, added to which garaging for 4-class will only lead to increased traffic flows and further ecological damage. The CEMP should be approved prior, and there's been no sign of this. No consideration has been given to the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, surely crucial when considering a plan in such a protected environment. Gages Close don't own the access to their site, it belongs to Grayslea. Vehicle access to Gages Close is down Graysley's Drive and the historic avenue of 49 ancient lime trees, all with TPOs. A great variety of wildlife lives here, including protected species of bats and tawny and little owls. On the ground, there are currently carpets of primroses, fritillaries, scillas and anemones. Later in the year, we see cowslips and even orchids. The proposed development involves demolition and removing a large, as yet unquantified amount of earth. With or without removal of soil off-site, these earthworks will have a detrimental effect on the ecosystem. The access to the site is very tight. Regular-sized dust carts are unable to access the property. Drainage considerations seem to be entirely ignored. The proposed full-height glazing on the southern side of the proposed property will be vulnerable to bird strike. There's no mitigation shown on the plans. Has anyone taken heed of the arboricultural report commissioned in May 2021? Stated in the report, raising ground levels even for a few weeks and only by several centimetres can suffocate roots, causing severe dieback. Any proposed protective matting will merely add stress to the avenue. Same report says parking of heavy vehicles and cars must not be allowed near the root area. Compaction and oil contamination result. As the total area of Gage's Close site is only 0.84 of an acre, access is minimal. The movement.
I'm afraid you've run out of time. Do you want to just finish your sentence?
It makes no sense. The movement of heavy construction traffic is the inevitable parking of vehicles going to have a detrimental effect.
Thank you very much indeed. Now don't go away, because I'm sure members of the committee will have questions for you.
Maybe not.
All right, thank you very much for your contribution, Mr. Stubbs. Thank you. If you'd like to return to your seat, if you could just switch the microphone off again, that would be lovely. Thank you. Okay, now we move to the supporter. We have the agent, Mrs. Waldron, and the applicant, is it Karen Carr? Other way around, okay, sorry. If one of you is able to answer questions, or is just one of you coming up? Okay, so that's Karen Clark, the agent. Lovely, thank you very much. So when you're ready, you have 3 minutes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. The applicant wished to speak this afternoon to highlight their commitment to the park and outline their objectives to create a replacement family home, but time constraints have determined otherwise. They have, however, lived in the Itchen Valley for 25 years and wish to continue doing so for many more. Central to the design process has been their ambition to secure a home that responds to the landscape, is designed of its time and is highly sustainable, all of which is of great importance to them. In pursuing these objectives, the applicants have undertaken substantial research and engaged with numerous specialists. We would also highlight that the existing property has been carefully assessed and has not been found to be of any historic or cultural importance that would preclude its replacement. This is fully detailed in the committee report. Ultimately, this scheme is the product of thorough research, good quality design and engagement with your officers and the design review panel, all of whom have been supportive of a contemporary design solution. The roof form in particular has been subject to scrutiny in a number of iterations. The strong, simple angled roofs respond to specific concerns about the more complex curved roof that was originally proposed. The amended roof design and detailing, together with more muted and limited palace materials, create a strong yet elegant design that sits quietly on the plot, allowing the landscape to remain visually dominant rather than the dwelling itself. This delicate balance is where the strength of the design rests. The main visual receptor lies to the south, that being the public footpath. Considerable analysis and modelling have been undertaken to inform the height and mass of the proposal, with these key matters comparing favourably to the existing property. The comprehensive landscape appraisal has further demonstrated that the dwelling would not cause harm to the landscape beauty of the area as viewed from the south, whilst no longer distance views would be impacted or harmed. Trees and hedgerows would be retained and protected, with detailed proposals provided. Tree protection conditions are proposed and they will appropriately control these matters. The property would be fitted with automated dusk to dawn blackout blinds, details of which have already been submitted as part of the application and a condition recommended to address this. The installation of these blinds is recognised within the authority's technical advice note as being an appropriate means of mitigation for light pollution. There would be no adverse impact on the dark skies of the park. Biodiversity net gains are achieved through several design decisions, including bat and bird boxes and the sedum roofs on the western end of the dwelling and garage. Planting within the garden would also include native and biodiversity enhancing species, details of which can be appropriately controlled by condition. The siting scale and design ensure no harm to neighbouring amenities. Overall, the scheme delivers a high-quality, contemporary and sustainable family home that responds and respects its sensitive landscape setting. It would neither conflict with the purpose of the National Park designation nor any development plan policy, as carefully detailed in the committee report. We trust that you will support your officer's recommendation and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and well done for keeping exactly within 3 minutes. Okay, members, do we have any questions, please? Yes, Councillor Ruther.
Thank you, Chair. How much larger is the proposed than the original?
It is, so there have been, in exploring the opportunities to create the home that they want on the site, The applicants did investigate and explore extending the property, as you've seen. So the replacement dwelling reflects and respects what could otherwise be created on the site, but undoubtedly it is a larger property than what is currently on site now. But I think as detailed in the committee report, it's not the loss of a small dwelling, which is the purpose of your SD30 policy, and it is, it's a substantial property there now, and it's a substantial property going back.
How much larger?
It reflects the size that could otherwise be achieved by the planning permissions. But it is larger. It's 200.
Much larger.
I don't have the percentage down.
Just say that.
Councillor Ravel, I think we can ask the officer that. Thank you. Any other questions? Could I ask, what is there going to be some sort of management plan for the construction period, and to protect that very valuable and vulnerable avenue of lime trees?
So yes, there is in the tree survey and method statement, there is shown to be protection around the trees at the entrance. For their long-term protection, that has been detailed and that's covered by a condition.
I think it's probably a civil matter, the access question, if you don't have. Anyway, that's a civil matter, not a planning question. Yes, Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. Mr. Clark, did you consult with the South Downs National Park about the actual application, or just with the City Council?
We applied to the South Downs National Park for a pre-app, and we've been through the design review panel as well.
And did they come back with any objections or any modifications?
Well, through discussions with the officer and the design review panel, we have modified the design to the point it is now. So the design reflects the constructive advice we've received.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
And I've just got one more question about so if you were given planning permission, what would happen to the existing house? Would it just be sent to landfill, or what are we going to see the materials reclaimed in any way?
Efforts would be made to reclaim as much of the materials as possible. Obviously, the central thrust of this scheme is the sustainability going forward long term. So yes, the elements may be crushed to create hardcore, and elements would be reclaimed where possible.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? No, thank you very much. If you could switch off your microphone.
Thank you.
Okay, Charlotte, was there anything you wanted to add following the public contributions? Thank you.
I've just calculated it, it's a 65% increase.
65 over the permitted size, or the existing
from 263 to 434 is 65%.
So is that the existing rather than the permitted? I believe as
yes, I'm just looking at in the report it says as existing on December 2002.
Okay, but bear in mind that it does have existing planning permission for what % increase? Do we know?
I can't find it in the report. I think it's in here somewhere. I think the percentage increase with the PD extensions. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
So I think that's the basis on which they're.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right, members. So let's turn to the report. I'm quite keen to take all the report actually. So I'll take questions on any elements of this, although it is quite long, but never mind. Any elements of the report. And to keep you on your toes. No. Councillor Lamy, thank you.
Yeah, we noticed that as part of this bill, we're using Portland stone. That's not really reflective of the area, is it, of the South End Park? I would have thought it'd be more in keeping to use more local materials. What's your view on
that? Materials have been raised before, so I've conditioned materials to be submitted in detail before building work starts, so it can be amended.
Yeah, but we're looking at Portland stone rather than traditional brick and tile of the area.
I believe the applicant's going for a more modern design, but I don't think there is a local brick, so to speak, in the south of Hampshire. And the surrounding properties are quite varied as well. but I have put a condition on to make sure I see samples first.
Trees, principal developments, access, conditions. Councillor Laney.
Is this classified as a self-build, or is it going to attract silver?
I believe it's a self-build, yes. It's it's a self-build. Replacement self-build. So yeah.
I had a question on light spillage, but that was dealt with by the automatic blinds. So, it being a passive house, although I didn't see solar panels in the designs, presumably has it got solar panels on it?
I'm just checking. I believe one of the variations did. I think this one has on the roof somewhere. I know it's got a cedar roof. You got solar? Yeah, it has got solar panels on, I believe.
That's integrated PV site comes a fixture.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, no more questions on the report. Debate. Councillor Pearson.
I've got to say, I was a bit startled when as I suspect Councillor Raphael was, the size of this in relation to the previous bill. But then when I looked at it within the context of the actual site, it didn't seem to be excessive. And as none of the constituencies have raised that issue, and Charlotte is still saying, well, it's okay within that context, I'm happy to go along with that. What I would like to say, congratulate you, and congratulate you, Charlotte. Here's a building, 21st century building, innovative, which is I'm looking for. I think it's a beautiful building. It's a little unusual, Lynch and Abbas, let's face it, but these houses in Lynch and Abbas are well spread out. I can imagine the views across the Itchen Valley. The potential is fantastic. But I noticed any reservations I might have had have been covered by the conditions. So you're ahead of me on that. Well done. There's also somebody said, you've got to include this, otherwise the Parliament's going to raise it. Including the biodiversity gain, which regulation doesn't come in yet. But great, that's what I'm looking for. Thank you very much. And delightful decision. Love it.
Anybody else? Yes, I'll put in my 10 pence worth. I really am very against demolishing buildings perfectly livable in houses, but this has been looked at very carefully in terms of, is it any sort of non-listable heritage asset, and our officers tell us that it isn't, that it's a very ordinary example of a turn of the last century house, which is not worth keeping for its own sake. And in terms of looking to save the planet and the environmental impact, actually trying to heat a house like this, which has got virtually no foundations, virtually no insulation, impossible to heat, impossible to bring up to modern standards, I'm afraid its time has come to an end, and I'm very pleased to hear that the plan is that as much as possible of the existing dwelling should be recycled, repurposed, moved on to other heritage buildings and so on. We do need to have many more passive house, standard houses built in order to cope with the climate change and to keep our carbon footprint as low as possible. So on that basis, I'm happy to support it, and I echo Councillor Pearson's points about good conditions, and a lot of the issues that I was prepared to raise have been covered. So well done. Even got Swift boxes in gold star. So I'm happy to support the recommendation If you could switch off your microphone, Councillor, please, that would be great.
Sorry.
Microphone. Okay, members, if nobody else wishes to contribute to debate, this application is recommended for approval. So can I see all those members in favour of approval? And those against?
One against, Chair, and
Okay, so
7.
that, thank you very much, Matthew, that application is approved. And that's the end of today's planning committee. Thank you very much.